Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We have got another incredible guest joining us. Tammy, do you want to tell everyone who you are and where you are in the world?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Tammy Caldwell and I'm in Peterborough in the United Kingdom.
Amazing. Okay, so we are going to start, as we always do, at the beginning of your healing journey. And what happened? What made you realize that something had to change? Like, what was that moment for you, or moments leading up to? Yeah, share with everyone where we're starting this journey.
Yeah, of course. I think that's such a good question. Um, and I think definitely for me and possibly for a lot of other people as well, I don't think healing's a very linear kind of journey. Definitely there was a few different points there. So definitely three major ones that I can remember that all kind of cause new layers of healing, should we say. But I think probably what might be helpful is to kind of go back a little bit and think about kind of my childhood and what was happening there. So I grew up with a mum and dad. My mum's still with me. My dad sadly passed a couple of years ago. And I have an older brother as well. So he's 12 years older. So quite a big age gap there. Um, so he did move out when I was quite young, actually. So for the majority of my childhood, it was me, my mum, and my dad. Um, yeah, so a childhood that was quite chaotic, for want of a better word. So definitely, my dad had a lot of stuff and a lot of trauma from his own childhood that I wasn't really aware of till that I was older myself. Um, Nothing that he'd shared with me himself, really, but just from other family members and some little bits that kind of came out over the years. That he didn't really share much at all. Um, and by meaning chaotic, really, he did have functional alcohol dependency, really. So he was very functioning. He could still work. So he was a lorry driver for much of his life, which he did enjoy. So he did work very hard during the week. And then during the weekends, kind of his coping mechanism was definitely drinking. And that was usually from kind of the Friday all the way through to the Sunday. So every weekend when he was home, that's kind of how I remembered my dad really growing up. So either quite intoxicated or if not, just getting ready to go for a drink and kind of go to the pub. With that did come quite a lot of anger. So he had a lot of rage to everybody and anybody around him a lot of the time. There was never kind of any physical abuse from my dad at all. And yeah, just to be really clear that me and my dad did have a relationship up until his passing, and I did care for him before he passed. So we did still have that relationship. We absolutely did. Um, yeah, and it was, I would say, towards the kind of end of his life, there was quite a lot of healing from my part, definitely. Um, but I think it was just, yeah, important to acknowledge that we did still have that relationship. And I think two things can be very true at once, that you can still have like hold a lot of hurt around things and still kind of have that care and love for a parent. So I know that my story is no different to a lot of other people's. I do know that. But also just to say that, I don't think that you need to have a relationship with somebody who has, if I'm putting it really honestly, had a lot of abusive behavior towards their child and to others. I did, but I don't think that you need to have kind of any forgiveness or kind of any relationship if that's something that you don't feel that you want. So yeah, so in regards to kind of the rage, there was a lot of kind of destroying of the house, especially when he was drunk, that kind of thing. So a lot of screaming and shouting towards mum and me, so for different reasons. Um, yeah, so it was very much kind of a childhood home of never knowing kind of what was going to happen. So even kind of during the week, if he was working, he didn't need to be drunk to be angry. Something could have happened during the day. Somebody could have said something, and then that was kind of released at home. So I think some of my kind of childhood memories are literally just kind of fearing kind of the door being opened and knowing kind of when he was walking in, kind of what me and my mum was going to experience that night, if I'm being honest. So I think that I really felt that that was normal because I had no other anything to compare it to. So I had obviously a lot of friends as a child who I used to go and spend some time at their house, usually, if I'm being honest, to kind of get away, to escape for a little while. If I knew kind of what time he was going to be coming back from the pub, especially, I'd try and be out of the way. And I think there was a couple of moments I did think, if I'd have said that or had done that, then this had been the reaction that I would have got at my home. But yeah, my friends' dads would be just very different. And I think there was a couple of times I did think, okay, maybe that they were the anomaly, that maybe they were just, really well regulated, really well controlled. Obviously, I didn't know about regulation at that time. So very, very very scary for a child, definitely very scary for a child, having no kind of reasoning why that was happening. Definitely did feel, because a lot of the focus of his rage could be on me at times. And I think kind of in hindsight and looking back, that was definitely around what I was triggering in him. So obviously I was a young girl, I was quite bouncy, I was quite loud sometimes, and obviously that was really difficult for him and kind of what he'd been through. And tidiness was a massive thing for him as well. So just a child's nature, really, isn't it? So having toys out, all that kind of thing. So I did experience quite a lot of his rage. But I think I did notice kind of through my kind of teenage years, our relationship did become quite strained, because obviously you do get a lot more confident and maybe assertive as you're growing up a little bit. So that was definitely me. And I did kind of leave the family home from 16 to 19, and then did come back for a year. So I did leave home very early, kind of knowing that that was kind of the reason I needed to leave and wanted to get out of the home. But it wasn't really until kind of my late teens, probably early 20s, that I think everything kind of came to a head within me. So definitely then started having major anxiety. Just kind of, it felt like it was a switch and there was no reason for it. And what was kind of diagnosed as depression at the time. I think that there was possibly some of that was a factor. But I definitely think it was a completely and utterly burnt out nervous system of being very hypervigilant, being aware of kind of everything. Everything felt dangerous to me now on reflection, everything. So any raised voice, any change in kind of mood, anybody, whether that was in personal relationships, work, or anywhere. So I think it was kind of around my early 20s that I did kind of learn about the nervous system and kind of trauma, and kind of what I potentially didn't fully digest is what I'd been through or what I'd experienced, but definitely I did really embrace the nervous system work and felt that, there was something in my body that was kind of causing me to react in certain ways. So yeah, really kind of dove into the nervous system work. I would say at that stage, I was really stuck on just regulating. So just coming back to kind of a safer kind of feeling in my body, but it wasn't really resolving anything because it was just continuing to regulate constantly during the day rather than full healing. But still very thankful for younger Tammy there, and exploring that kind of work, definitely. And then the two kind of other major definitely areas of healing would be after having both my children, so my son and my daughter. And with both, my son, I got postnatal depression, and with my daughter, I did as well. With my daughter, it's quite a scary one. It was quite different to my son's kind of my experience after having my son of postnatal depression. With my daughter, it was present with a lot of illogical thoughts as well. So they were both really, really painful. And I think that I think a nervous system that has been kind of primed, ready to notice any changes at all. The drop of hormones was especially a big thing for my nervous system and for my body and for my brain. So my brain definitely felt that, this is a massive risk here, something's happening here. But I also think that apart from the hormonal impact, there was a big kind of the trauma release as well, and about the fact that I was becoming a parent, and the fact that, how was I going to parent my children? And that had been something that I'd been thinking for a long time before I chose to have children, definitely. But I think it was that whole, hormones have shifted. You've got these little humans, and how, do we make sure that we protect them from kind of any experience that, that they never have to question kind of themselves, their worth, and if they was the cause of anything. So I think that was a big part of my healing journey, and looking further at the relationship with my dad at that point. Yeah. And then,
Oh,
sorry, Jacky, yeah.
no. Oh my gosh. Just, yeah, that like we'll get to the third thing, like
Yeah.
definitely. I just think like there's so much already there in, that childhood, and it is that thing for kids, like they don't know what normal,
Mm,
or that there is something different or another option available. It is just literally what they're presented with is what they think is how the world is.
mm,
And then taking that into your own experience of being a parent and really
mm.
consciously thinking about, okay, generationally, how do we not do the same
Yes.
thing or create the same environment or the same kind of long-term feeling, like that is in itself like a really big thing already. Okay, what was the third thing? Tell us.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, absolutely agree with you, definitely. And I'm sure we'll speak more about parenting, yeah, and kind of my children, definitely. Um, but yeah, I think it was just before my dad became ill. And I do like to think that the universe had a part in this, definitely. And it has some funny ways of kind of having lessons. Um, but for some reason, definitely, and there was no real trigger that I know, that there was a lot of kind of trauma that came up about 3 or 4 years ago. And I think it was a full kind of body understanding that actually what I had experienced was exactly that. So even though logically I might have known that for quite a few years, I think it was only those few years ago that I actually thought, actually, yes, fully in my body, that's exactly what I experienced, and that's exactly what happened. And I felt it. And I think there was definitely some release there. And then it was just a couple of months after that, and starting to do some really deep work, that my dad became ill. So he got Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. Yeah, so he really had an awful time, a really really awful time. But yeah, I think the universe did give me a gift there as well. I think it gave me yeah, healing trauma and kind of healing our relationship through caring for him for his last couple of years, really there, and doing what I could in that respect. So yeah, I think that was definitely all for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. I did like I massively believe in the universe putting things in our path, and things happening for a reason. And I think the thing with the nervous system that a lot of people don't realize, and I think you've really like nicely touched on, and I'm sure we'll speak more about this as we go through, is that idea that your nervous system, is trying to keep you safe, and
Yes.
anything that feels different is deemed unsafe. Like, even if it's not actually unsafe, even if, hormone drops, it deemed something really bad is happening here. And actually, the more trauma that you've experienced in a certain area, the more likely you are to have triggers in those areas. So I was actually chatting to somebody this weekend, just gone, about running. And I had quite a difficult experience when I tried to run my first marathon, and I ended up in an ambulance. And there was a moment where my nervous system definitely thought I was going to die, even though I was actually logically very safe and I was in no danger. Like, my nervous system genuinely thought, and it went into that shutdown. And it then took me such a long time after that to actually re-regulate and to actually, like, I couldn't actually regulate myself after that. I actually had to get one of my friends who's an incredible healer to, like, actually, like, help me regulate, because I couldn't regulate by myself anymore because I'd been pushed so far out of my nervous system. And it's like one of those really interesting things that I think a lot of people don't actually realize is sometimes all of the good information and intention that's out there is actually still not going to work for you when you are so dysregulated and you're so in a trauma response of regulation, not just like, oh yeah, I'm a little bit stressed out or a little bit burnt out at the moment. Like, that's a very different level of dysregulation. So I think like it's a really interesting topic to then look at actually that full circle of your childhood into becoming a parent, into then parenting your parent like through their last days. Like it's a really kind of beautiful like evolutionary cycle, which I think yeah we'll definitely obviously talk about more. But before we kind of dive into more of that, I want to ask you, like, as you were going through this, so younger Tammy, and then Tammy becoming a mum, and then Tammy becoming a carer, like all of these different versions, like what did you have to embrace about yourself, learn about yourself, accept about yourself to actually go through this journey and go through this healing?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And I think one of the hardest things that I had to accept was that mine and my dad's nervous system was patterned the same, exactly the same. We just had very different ways of expressing that, and yeah, and kind of coping with that. So maladaptive coping mechanisms, most definitely, we both had those, but just in very different ways. So my dad was very obviously outwards facing, so other people were potentially to blame in his nervous system, in his body. He very much wanted to control others in a way to try and soothe himself. So I'm not doing that in a shameful or blaming way to him at this point at all. And anger was his go-to. Whereas anger was definitely something that I could never access because it's something that I was so scared of, obviously. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to be that for anybody else. I didn't want to express that. So that's definitely part of my healing, is understanding that anger is a healthy emotion. It's just about the expression. But yeah, so I think the fact that we were both very, the fact that I basically copied and pasted his nervous system into mine through that experience, and really looking at that and thinking, yeah, actually, we were both constantly, a lot of the time, in fight or flight. He chose is the wrong word, because I don't think he did. I think he did what he felt, or what his nervous system felt was the way to try and protect him. And I think the way that I did that was just kind of the different path of people pleasing, making myself smaller. So I think there was a lot of time that I said, I'm nothing like my dad. I'm nothing like him. I'm very different. And actually, what I did have to embrace was actually, no, we're not. We both have, this nervous system pattern. It has been like generational trauma that has been kind of passed on and through. And I'm sure for many years, he did have from the little that I do know, a very kind of traumatic childhood. It was him and three brothers. His dad died when he was like a baby in the war, so his mum was on her own with three children, and they did kind of live in like a tin hut. So no money, dad they're not there anymore. Never knew his father. A mum who was trying to look after three children on her own at that time, and yeah, no food, no nothing. So just about, physical survival was a big thing for him, for all of them. So yeah, and I think it was just kind of realizing that, embracing that, and then kind of working through some compassion around, what he had experienced, and that, it wasn't particularly intentional, but then also coming to a really careful balance, and what I still do. And that's kind of why I also said that disclaimer earlier, that, you do not need to forgive somebody who has, been abusive or had abusive behavior in your life at all. You don't even have to have a relationship with them. So I chose to do that. But just a really careful balance between, he was responsible for his healing, and unfortunately he couldn't do that. But then also just having compassion for his experience and having some boundaries around that, I think. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely. I think it's really like it is really important for you for for people who are going through this healing journey to understand that part of the process of going through this journey and becoming the person that you're meant to be means that your relationships with other people will change.
Mm.
And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like that doesn't have to be a negative thing. And you can absolutely put boundaries in place, decide how and what you want those relationships to look like, whether you want those relationships at all. Like that's obviously absolutely a choice that people have 100%. And I massively agree on that idea, like the idea that like blood is thicker than water, and because somebody's family, you should just, let them know. Like I massively disagree with that. I think we all have a system in place that lets us know what our value is, and we let people treat us to what we value in ourselves. And if we let people treat us badly, it's not actually on them for the way that they're treating you. It's on you for the way that you're accepting and letting that treatment be. And I think like it's a really hard thing when you're first going through healing and you're first sort of coming to terms with this, because it is so much easier to just blame the other person. Well, my upbringing was rubbish because of you,
Mm.
or, I had this really hard time because of you, or, I've never had a good relationship because of you. Like, it's so easy to just point that finger outwards at somebody else and just say, well, it was all your fault. Be that, friends, family, romantic partners, business, like literally, like whatever you want to look at. Like, it's so easy to do that. But actually, it's much more challenging to sit back and say, where did I not have a strong enough boundary? Where was I letting myself be treated in this way? And I mean, I will caveat this. Obviously, as a child, this is a very different statement. Yeah, as a child, you weren't sitting there going, "Yes, I'm just going to let everyone treat me badly." Like, obviously, as a child, this is very different, and children should be, coveted in the value that they have. But I think that as an adult, once you start getting to that point of becoming consciously aware of your nervous system and being able to have that emotional intelligence like develop, there has to come a point where you say, I am responsible somehow here. And even if it is not for the thing that happened, it's for how we proceed now after the thing that's happened. So, like, it sounds like you did that quite well. Like, it sounds like, from what you're saying around how you managed to have that relationship, but still have those boundaries, like, be a carer, but still actually have that healing journey for yourself as well in the process. Like, it sounds like you found quite a nice balance in all of this. And I guess I want to know, like, were there moments where it was still really hard? So you said obviously after your kids, you had postpartum depression. Obviously, with your dad being ill, you were caring for him. Like, were there specific moments where you just thought, like, I've learned all of this good stuff, but actually none of it matters. Like, I still can't make this work.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think one of them was around kind of thinking kind of as my dad was really ill, definitely, and kind of all that journey around this feeling that there was never going to be a further conversation around kind of my childhood and what had happened. And I think there was only once or twice that had ever been kind of broached before with him when he'd been like really quite mentally mentally struggling. So there was a couple of times he had said to me that he'd felt really anxious when usually he would never say anything. And a couple of times where I'd tried to support him to get some support for that and to have some kind of talk therapy and potentially even just at that point to speak to his GP. But that was never something that he felt he was able to do really. So I do find it kind of interesting that he was able to kind of say that to me a couple of times and that he felt that we had that relationship. So yeah, that was in some ways quite nice actually, because I think he realised that I think he knew that I knew. I saw him and I saw kind of his experience. But I think, yeah, one of the hardest parts was kind of that caring time. And I did want him to be really comfortable and really well. But with the Lewy body dementia, sometimes he didn't know who I was anymore. So I think it was kind of a grief around that, just generally, because, you know, your dad having kind of Lewy body dementia and seeing him, you know, have a really, really tough time. And also not recognizing me anymore. But I think it was kind of a grief of, you know, there's never going to be kind of that kind of validation now about actually, yes, this is kind of what was happening during your childhood, and, you know, I'm accountable for that, and any kind of connection on that level. So that's something that I never did get. But actually, I think, obviously I don't know what that would have been like, but I don't think that that matters now, because I think that was kind of a gift in itself, that, you know, it was not something that I needed from outwards. It was definitely, you know, it was a acceptance inwards, that it doesn't really matter kind of what his view would be on that or anybody else's, because, you know, it was my experience. And I do know, after kind of many years of kind of minimizing it all, that, you know, it wasn't acceptable for a child to kind of have that. And but as you said as well, Jacky, that also kind of confronting that people pleasing part of myself, very much so. And also that was kind of one of the hard things to embrace as well, going back to that, as in, my dad had quite a lot of controlling behaviours over kind of me and my mum. So he wanted us back at a certain time. We weren't allowed to go certain places. So it was very much trying to soothe his nervous system. So, but very highly controlling. So there was a lot of that kind of within his relationships with me and my mum. And then just kind of looking at the fact that, you know, I wouldn't be controlling anybody in my life. Anybody could do what they wanted to do to me and everything. I would accept a lot, tolerate a lot, but then also flipping that and thinking, but actually I am trying to control people in a way, because I'm trying to control their response to me. I'm absolutely trying to control their response to me and their, you know, if any kind of their anger, displeasure, anything, by minimizing my own needs and desires and anything like that. So that was definitely another area that was really kind of tricky to get through and to confront.
Absolutely. It's really like really, really interesting for me. So I've got a relationship in my life which is similar. So the person hasn't passed away, but they have got some memory cognition issues. And it's such an interesting thought process around like realizing you're never going to be able to have that conversation, you know, realizing for, you know, for whatever reason that person's out of your life, that person's passed away, that person's, you know, mentally not able to have that conversation, whatever the reason is. But like realizing that you're never going to be able to have that, like there's never going to be that closure in the sense of what a lot of people think that it should be. But then actually what you just said around like actually you didn't need that closure from anybody else, like you could give it to yourself in that process. I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. Like, I have never been overly concerned about getting closure from the situation that I'm in either, because I have that same belief as you that, you know, it was my experience and nobody else needs to validate my experience. And I can then choose how I behave with that person, you know, based on now, not, you know, previous, which I think is also, you know, my within my control and my option. But I do think that a lot of people hold on to, again, like putting their power and responsibility in somebody else's hands to say, oh, well, they never gave me closure, or, you know, they never like had that conversation, or they were never able to do this. When actually, I think it is such a thing to just say, like, I don't actually need that. Like, I don't need somebody else to validate my experiences or, you know, say what happened or what didn't happen. Like, I think that that's a really important message that people need to hear, especially from a generational trauma like perspective, because it is like it is really good to understand what happened generationally. Like it is good to understand where your parents, your grandparents, like what happened in your lineage. But then I think at the same time, exactly like you said, even though you understand it and you can have compassion for it, it still wasn't right. The situation you were in still wasn't right. And you can also be in that space. Like I love the thing you said right at the beginning about like two things can be true at once. Like that's such a important message for people to hear when it comes to being a human. Like it's not a case of just like, oh, we only feel one thing, or only one thing is true. Like two people can have two completely different experiences, and both of those things can be true based on the person and their own nervous system and what's going on for them and how they respond to things. And you know, it's such an important thing for people to understand, I think. And I guess like as you were going through this journey, you've already given us like a couple of different things where you were like, my perspective changed around these sorts of different things. But like, what do you think the biggest outlook change was for you from being that child to then being a mother to being a carer to, being here now? Like, what do you think the outlook shift was?
That's a great question as well, Jackie. Yeah, I love how eloquently you just explained all that as well around, yeah, about it doesn't have to be, yeah, just the two truths can be, there at the same time, definitely. But yeah, I'm just thinking about the biggest outlook change. I think there's definitely a few. So definitely around making my body the priority, so my nervous system the priority, absolutely. So I'm someone who's always lived kind of in my brain, that's it. Body didn't feel safe because that's kind of where the trauma is and kind of where we are reading the environment as well. So up and out was definitely where I lived for a lot of years, and still can go there, as we all can. um, so definitely one of my outlooks is that, my body is the priority on a daily basis, making sure that I am working with my nervous system, giving it space, giving it time, giving it rest, which feels really rebellious because kind of it does. Yeah, some of my coping mechanisms definitely has been around perfectionism, working as much as I can work to prove my worth, all of that. So anything that kind of puts me first or my body first and my needs first still feels really rebellious, but that's really fun actually, because the more that I can try and push that, um, yeah, it's quite kind of like, yeah, really exciting for me now, the more that I can stand in that. And I think generally, um, just compassion generally, for myself and everybody else. I think, yeah, I think the outlook is that I think there is a lot of people that potentially have had experiences that have really impacted their nervous system and their life and how they are in their life, exactly like I have. But I think that generally, I think a lot of us do minimize that, minimize our experiences. So I think it is just around, definitely that's going to be kind of my message, is around, things possibly have happened to you that have really impacted you. And let's kind of, bravely kind of have a look at that and see kind of how that is costing us in our life now.
That's a beautiful message. That's a really beautiful message. Yeah, I don't know, like whenever I speak to guests on the podcast, I'm always just so blown away by the like depth of understanding, but the depth of like compassion and ability to just see the world and themselves and situations in a different way. Because for so many people, like they've had really challenging upbringings, they've had really hard lives, they've had really terrible things happen to them, really traumatic health experiences. Like there's been like so many of the people that we speak to on the podcast have come from like quite a big like drama that has kind of fueled their healing process. Not all of them, some of them have, been a bit more subtle, but like a lot of people, there's like big things that have happened. And to see how incredible not only like humans are able to like deal with that, but then thrive off the back of it and like do something good in the world and you know, show up for their families, their communities, like heal generational trauma. Like there's just like so many incredible things that guests do off the back of these really challenging situations. And it's just such a like it's just such an honor to be able to listen to people's stories and like have this ability to actually hear from people like what changed and how they got to where they are now. So I mean, yeah, just like thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really, really cool. And like one of the questions I always ask people is, did going through your healing journey change what you thought your purpose was in life? So, you know, a lot of people will say to me, well, I was doing this job and then I, you know, changed into this job, or I started this business, or I, you know, I sort of found this new like career path. Like, did your healing journey have any impact on that for you?
Definitely. I think it's driven kind of all of my career choices. Absolutely. Yeah. So I've done quite a lot of training around the nervous system generally. So I did do one of the first things I did was hypnotherapy diploma and kind of counselling skills diploma. So that was very early on. So that was kind of in my early 20s when I first started kind of exploring things. And then also I've worked in adult social care. So I'm a social worker for 20 years. So a long, long time. So very passionate about social work. Absolutely love just speaking to people, learning about people, what's made them who they are, kind of what their desires are, what they want to achieve, all of that, absolutely. But I do remember during and it's something that I'd already felt as well, but definitely something during one of my lectures for my social work degree was around an amazing lecturer actually saying, if you want to be a social worker to help people, then don't. And just the way that he said that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what I've always felt, because we don't want to help people. Helping people is not where we want to be. It's around enabling people so that we're no longer needed. So that anybody in kind of healing support, any kind of profession like that, we don't want to be, you know, leading somebody. We want to just give them a couple of tools, a few things so that they can kind of lead themselves and be the own hero in their healing journey, because that's kind of the only way that it's going to happen anyway. But definitely kind of support is absolutely there. But I think that was definitely kind of a big realization for me, between kind of help and support are very different things. Yeah, and more recently kind of exploring more kind of into my business and yeah, and kind of the healing work that I'll be doing within there, and some further training around a nervous system practitioner certification. So yeah, definitely kind of the healing work that I have done and kind of what I have, just the change in me as a person. I just, yeah, definitely it's just a pure purpose and calling now that I want to be able to share this with others, most definitely.
I love that. I think like it's pretty much all the people I speak to as we go through this process have been called to then do something with, you know, everything that they've learned. And you know, whether that is in a business or whether that is voluntarily, or you know, however, like in their career, however they're doing it, there's such a drive, I think, when you've learned so many good things and you know how impactful they'll be on somebody else, and then being able to like take that into the world and actually help people. And I massively agree with you around that idea of like, you don't actually want to be, I mean, I see it as being like a crutch for somebody. Like, I don't want to prop up somebody in a healing space or in a business space. I would much rather they could do it by themselves. And I think I've done a good job when they no longer need me. And I know that that is a very, like a lot of people, especially in the business world, don't work in that way because it's very much about driving profit. And, you know, in a spiritual world, it's a very different concept. And this is a lot of reason why a lot of healers don't make good money, is because they're very good at what they do and they don't need people to stay forever and ever. So it's like, you know, it's like that catch 22. But I think, like, for me, that thing in, like, I've always wanted to bring that same concept into the business world and get people to the point where they don't need me as quickly as possible, because I think it's so much more empowering when somebody can go do the thing and then they can go and teach more people, and we're going to have a much bigger impact on the world if we come from that angle rather than coming just from a like a profit driven, like how do I keep this person asking me questions for as long as possible. So I think that like it's such a beautiful way of looking at actually moving into whether you're doing, you know, a support career or whether you're doing a you know, a business in pretty much anything. I think all businesses should be run from that heart space. I think it would change the way that the world works massively, which is always good. But let's get into advice then. So what would your advice be? So if you've got somebody, and let's go very specific for your kind of world. So if somebody has had quite a traumatic childhood and is now trying to navigate that as they're kind of growing up and coming into adult life and trying to regulate their nervous system and figure out generationally how they fit in, maybe becoming a mum, like all of your experience, like what would your advice be for women in that space?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Thank you, Jacky. I think definitely if kind of nervous system work is not something that somebody's aware of or not really kind of had kind of any reading or learning around that area, definitely kind of explore around kind of our nervous system states, kind of what nervous system state might be the one that you kind of always slip into when you become dysregulated as well. And definitely just body work. So definitely feeling emotions, as much as I said earlier that, you know, very easy to disassociate and go into the brain, and just creating kind of thought loops around situations. So anything that can stop us doing that is really helpful, because our brain's trying to protect us. And my brain is especially good, if I let it, to create all kinds of stories over what logically are the smallest inconvenience potentially. But, you know, my brain is doing what it's always done just to try and keep me safe, so I can't blame it. But yeah, so my advice would definitely be to get into the body, feel and release your emotions if you can. I think that's something that is just missing from basic education from when we're small, that we all need. Feeling our emotions, releasing and discharging any kind of activated energy. So when we are stressed or dysregulated, anxious, getting that energy out, because our body's really primed to take action at that point. It's got this flood of chemicals there ready to either fight, flight, and also freeze or form potentially. But if it is kind of that more activated energy, then, you know, I'm really all for kind of like hitting pillows, screaming, running, shouting, anything to get that out. Before then trying to do the stuff which I think people are more definitely aware of generally, you know, kind of meditation and breath work and stuff that's going to make us feel calmer. But I think one of the big things I like to get the message across is until our body's kind of exhausted that first activated state, it's not going to feel any calmer. So anything that we can do to discharge and release. And then, yeah, definitely just coming back to calmness in the body. So whatever, you know, that you can do just to feel your body. So whether that is just kind of touch or kind of yoga, gentle movement, anything that you like, because there's lots of different things that are options, but some are not a right fit for everybody. There's some things that I definitely wouldn't go to because I just get frustrated with. So yeah, just always thinking around kind of any hard time, any stressful time, how can I feel safer? How can I create safety in my body would definitely be kind of the biggest piece of advice that I could give, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Myself and a friend of mine, Zoe, we spend a lot of time talking about these things, and we were chatting about the nervous system when I was over in the UK a couple of months ago, and we were having this exact conversation about the fact that most people never actually process the emotion. They just get stuck in the cycle, and then they can't understand why the smallest thing triggers them, and it's got nothing to do with the thing that's triggered them. It's actually just all of this built up like nervous energy that's just sitting in their nervous system. So I think like that whole thing of like go and do something that gets rid of the energy, and whatever that is, like go and expel the energy, because that is going to be so valuable. And then worry about how you calm and re-regulate and do all of that. Because I do think that a lot of people just try and band-aid over, and they just try and, go straight into regulation without actually thinking, like, what am I actually feeling? Why am I feeling it? Like, how do I get rid of this feeling that I've got right now? So I think that that is such a good piece of like wisdom for people to take away. So thank you so much for sharing that. Like, that's really, really lovely. And then final question for you. So the question I always end the podcast with, which I absolutely love, is the next level of healing that is coming up for you. And I always love for our guests to hear, like, everybody goes through a healing journey. And for some people, when it first starts, it can be very kind of, turmoil and chaos and all of this. But actually, as we get better and better at noticing our nervous system, we can actually heal much more subtly. It doesn't always have to be this massive drama that's happening. So, what is that kind of next level for you? What are you focusing on? Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, I love that as well, that it doesn't have to be a drama now. Yeah, there's opportunity in healings, which I think some of kind of the deeper healing that I've done, it is like the dark night of the soul work, isn't it, Jacky? It's massive work when we really confront everything. But I think some of the healing work that I'm doing now and will continue to do forever, as we all will, is definitely around perimenopausal kind of hormonal symptoms and the embracing of kind of sacred anger, as I was talking about earlier. So I think, yeah, there's definitely new levels of that, which I think is great. I kind of see it as a gift, actually, because I think it's just dialing up yeah, that inner voice that says, actually, yeah, you are, worth more, or, there is a boundary here. So I think that's really helped kind of dialing that up, even though the other hormonal aspects might not be so great. We'll embrace the ones that do kind of support us, I think. So definitely kind of, and that kind of goes back to the postnatal depression stuff as well, and kind of how hormones can trigger an already sensitive nervous system. So kind of lots of healing work has been done, but I think that, there will be, there will be kind of potentially a bit of a lasting impact with my nervous system, and that's absolutely fine. It's just kind of working with that. And then the next one that you'll know all too well, Jacky, is around kind of the self-development and healing work through business, which is great, isn't it? Absolutely great. Both like really confronting and also really exciting at the same time. So, there's no hiding in business, you're seen, and it's, a lot of it, especially in this kind of work that we do and kind of healing, it's very personal. It means a lot. It's probably our personal journeys that we're sharing a lot of the time. So it's heart on sleeve, heart wide open kind of stuff that we're sharing. And, sometimes people don't resonate with that or whatever. And that's absolutely fine. And it's just about kind of supporting, ourselves through that when that happens, and knowing that, as long as we're showing up in a place of, with good intent and just, compassion for everybody, then, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. But I think it's a really good, it's a good mechanism having a business for all kinds of self-development. I'd definitely recommend it.
Oh, absolutely. Having your own business is the biggest personal development journey you will ever go on. It is not for the faint-hearted, that is for sure. And I think, like, as well, that thing of like just the continuous healing. Like, your nervous system is going to change as you change, and your hormones will affect it, your life will affect it, the stage of your life, the age of your children. Like, there are so many things that will affect your nervous system, that I think that it is quite oh, I don't know, like, it's quite egotistical to believe that we've like got it nailed and we're never gonna have to think about it again. Like, we have to kind of have that openness of like, actually, this is always gonna be a journey. There's always gonna be different things that come up. There's always gonna be, you know, different challenges and different questions. I know that, like, for me at the moment, a lot of the people around me are having children, and I get asked on a regular occurrence, like, like, are we going to have children? What, like, everyone's kind of that like pressure that builds around the topic. And that is confronting in itself. And there's a healing journey that has to happen around what I feel about that, like what my childhood brings up about that, like there's so much, and every new stage of life is going to bring up a new stage of nervous system work that you need to do. So I think that that's like, it's really nice to actually like have people see that you've gone through this, like coming into your teen years, like becoming a mum, like losing a parent. Like there's so many moments where you're going to have to work through this, and it's just like a new chapter. It's just a new part of the story, rather than, oh yeah, we're done with healing and we're never going to do it again. Like it's, yeah, it's just so wonderful, and it's just been such an honor to have you. Like thank you so much for sharing your journey, for being so open with us. Like I think it's so wonderful for people to have, to be able to listen to these conversations and get the wisdom and not feel like they're alone in this journey. Because I know a lot of people will have struggled with their upbringings, will maybe be questioning those relationships at the moment, and to have somebody so beautifully like give some context around how people could deal with this, like it's just a real privilege.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Jacky. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.